what's up? This is Gary from Raz Rentals. And today, well, I couldn't be happier because today I finally get to discuss NECA's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Fred Wolf series Ultimate. Should Super 7 call their lawyers about that? Slash. I've been dying to open this dude up and talk about him. Now, I've made it no secret that I've never been a huge fan of Slash in the original Fred Wolf series, you know? He lacked, like, the psychotic killer look that I thought the original action figure had. Like, he's got this goofy face. And I also thought he lacked the complexity of Slash from Archie Comics, who, you know, also, again, looked like a killer
and seemed dangerous and psychotic, while the Fred Wolf Slash looked kind of like a dork. I mean, don't get me wrong. Fred Wolf Slash is pretty psychotic and very violent, to the point where my dad didn't even like Slash in the cartoon because he thought he seemed too violent, you know, because as soon as he comes to Earth, he just starts trying to smash things downtown. I think my dad thought I was going to, like, go out and throw rocks at Burger King, which I did, but not because I watched Ninja Turtles, because it was fun. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't listen to me. But the thing is, you know, back in the day, everybody was like, the Ninja Turtles are violent. You know, every time you talk to an aunt or something like that, they'd be like, the Ninja Turtles are violent. And then you put on the Ninja Turtles and they're throwing, like, whipped cream pies in each other's faces and stuff like that. Well, Slash and Casey Jones were the exception, because those two characters actually were really aggressive in the cartoon and violent. I just think Slash's appearance didn't match the personality.
You know, I'm actually really excited to talk about this because back when NECA released their original action figures, I wasn't doing toy reviews yet. What was that? Drop the tape. I wasn't making action figure reviews yet when this original Slash came out. And so I never really reviewed him, you know? I never really got a chance to talk about the episodes. But now, finally, I'm going to talk about this action figure and review his 3 cartoon appearances. Super excited about that. You know, this original NECA Slash, he didn't really do much to win me over either. You know, he's built off of the original Ninja Turtle figures that they have. He just has this giant head and these cool spiked knee pads and hand pads, gloves. But, you know, he did have some problems, like this backpack. This thing kind of sucked because this little tiny, like, rubber wire here, like, always pulls out of the backpack. I don't know. He wasn't that great. Plus, this is one of those action figures way back when NECA was putting out toys, and the joints were, like, way too stiff. Like, his leg joints are super, super stiff. You hear that, like, sound? It's like every movement with this guy, you fear breakage. Both him and the arcade Slash. They are scary toys to move around. So let's begin with the toy review. This Slash action figure was included in NECA and Target's Cowabunga Collection promotion. That was back in August of 2024. I was able to order mine on August 27th and pick it up in store on the same day. If you're curious, I'm beginning this review in November 23rd to be exact. And unfortunately, and I'm talking to you from the future, I finished this video in March of 2025. So, you know, it's a sad, sad life I live. This dude cost $36.99, and if he's still available, I will put it up right here. Is he? I don't know. I gotta say, you know, these NECA prices sure have creeped up, you know. It's only a matter of time before we're paying Super 7 Ultimates prices for basic NECA action figures. I mean, already we're paying like $50 for, you know, characters like the Triceraton Gladiator. It just seems way too much. Even with all the accessories included in this, I still feel like they should be like $25 action figures. But, you know, I don't know anything about NECA's overhead or anything like that, so all I can do is bitch and not give you an actual reason why I think they should be cheaper. On the bright side, this action figure comes with an amazing piece of art right here on the front. This was done by Tim Laddie. He did the layouts. And then Aaron Hazuri did the finished art, you know. did all the line work and the colors. And I think it's a very nice piece of art, I gotta say. It's of course based off of the original VHS tapes from back in the day, where they tried to, they tried to make it look like it's a painted cover, just like those original ones. I love this one. Everything is pretty much shaded exactly the same. Plus, like the font here is the same. This one's called Binky's Day Out, and it is volume 18 in this series of NECA Ninja Turtle Fred Wolf series Ultimates. The only one I'm missing is Space Usagi. I never saw that one in store ever. I really like the scene here. I like Slash looking at Rocksteady and Bebop as they've somehow been shrunken. Who knows how. I like the idea of it, like, because you can see the Technodrome in the background and you see Shredder and Krang. It's almost like the Technodrome has invaded New York City, and instead of doing what he's supposed to do, Slash is in a pet shop looking for his Binky, and either Shredder and Krang are down here all mad because he should be out there fighting the turtles, or I also kind of think maybe Shredder and Krang are just mad because Slash is getting all the attention and they're being looked over. I did try to see if I could find this generic pet shop sign in any of my cartoon reference. I couldn't find it, so if you know of just a generic pet shop, let me know. I did, however, find 2 other pet stores. I found Howard's Pets from Planet of the Turtleoids, and I also found Ralph's Rent-A-Pet from Polly Wants a Pizza. The side of the box here, once again, looks just like the old classic VHS tapes. Both sides, actually. On the back here, you have some more amazing artwork by Aaron Hazuri. He posted about this on Facebook, and he said that this was all him, this back picture here. And he said the hardest part was drawing this tricycle, which, I could believe, because a year or 2 ago, I had to draw a motorcycle for someone, and just trying to figure that all out in perspective, man, that was a pain in the ass. But I really like this. I like the Technodrome eye right here on the front of the trike. And I just find this picture both hilarious and endearing. Like, look how cute Slash looks here, It's just so funny, I kind of wish that they would have included this vehicle in here for him to ride around. Now, I don't know why Aaron decided to draw him on a trike. He never rides a trike in the cartoon, but I just find it very funny. Now, up top here, there's a nice picture of Slash shooting his freeze ray. I think that's a very cool looking weapon. I'm super glad that they included it, because way back when I made my 2017 to 2020 accessories information video, I had said specifically that I would hope that they would make that freeze ray available in the future. And then down here you can see Slash holding his anti-gravitational beam. Nothing is impossible to someone with an anti-gravitational beam. Up here, this description is kind of interesting. It mostly discusses the first appearance of Slash. It says, down in the lower decks of the Technodrome, the 2 lazy loafers, Bebop and Rocksteady, hatch a wily scheme to get out of their chores. They swipe Shredder and Krang's supercharged mutagen, transforming Bebop's pet turtle into Slash, the evil turtle from Dimension X. The gruesome twosome quickly realize that Slash is a simple turtle with simple needs, who will do anything, almost anything, for his miniature palm tree that he calls Binky. However, their plan bogusly backfires when Slash refuses to be used and abused, so Bebop and Rocksteady use a tricky transportal tactic, sending the terror from the Terranium to the streets of New York City. They always make these like tongue twisters. Suffering from Binky withdrawal, Slash unleashes a ruthless rampage, smashing everything in sight, determined to find his most favorite thing in the world. But there's not enough room in this town for 5 mutant turtles, and when Slash is reunited with his Binky, he goes back to Dimension X, happily ever after. Back to the front here, we open it up, and we can see Slash in all of his glory. The window is nice and large, so you can see all the accessories in here. Some of these accessories are nice. And I really like the color of his gloves, this light blue color. In the later episodes he appears in, all of his knee pads and gloves and mask are gray, or like silvery gray. But in the very first appearance of Slash, I would say that those parts on his body are like this kind of lighter blue color. And overall, I really like the color scheme, you know? I really love that they decided to make the box purple because it matches so well with the highlights on his outfit, you know? And it goes so well with the blue, too. So, like, if you were a mint on card collector, I just think that this looks really awesome. I also really like how they put, like, a plastic cover over his face to protect from any kind of scuffs or scratches or anything like that. You know, I think that's great when companies decide to do that to try to protect the integrity of the paint. Over here on this side, you can see Slash holding his shield projector. It looks like a little rocket, but I like it. And then if we close this back up and look down on the bottom, it lists all of the major people who brought this action figure to you. It says director Randy Falk, Trevor Zammit, sculpt and fabrication Paul Harding, Tony Cipriano, paint Jeff Trapp, Mike Puzo, prototypes Roger Fernandez, photography. Now this is a new name for me, I think. Matt Clobberdance. I don't remember that name before. Packaging Travis Hasback, illustrations Tim Laddie and Aaron Hazuri. Accessories include anti-gravitational beam, freeze ray, backpack, binky, bowl, pet turtle, shield projector, interchangeable heads and hands. And of course down here it says Nickelodeon, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Still miss the Mirage days. So now I'm going to open this guy up, move him around. Hopefully everything's, you know, copacetic. Hopefully nothing breaks. Hopefully the limbs are somewhat stiff. We'll see. Somebody asked me recently, like, if I would go over what I do with these action figures when I first pull them out. I don't really do much of anything special. You know, I don't really put them under hot water or boil them or anything like that. I don't like doing that because I always feel like I'm going to tear the vinyl when I try to move the joints. You know, I can always see like the joints stretching. I don't like that. So I'm just very careful. You know, I try to put pressure on the joints in a way that I don't know how to describe it. You know, like I try to move the whole joint with the peg, you know, to try to make sure the peg doesn't snap or rip or anything like that. I don't know how to really describe what I do, but like, you know, instead of just grabbing somebody like here and like moving it like this, I might like instead of like going like that at first, I don't know, I might just like kind of push down with my whole hand to try to evenly distribute the force. I don't know how to describe it. I'm just very, very careful. So here he is, free from his prison of cardboard and plastic, ready to outwit, outgun, and outmuscle the Ninja Turtles. Not to mention, crush the original 2-pack Slash into obscurity. Oh no, not me. You know, I've never made it a secret that Fred Wolf's Slash is my least favorite Slash design out of all of them. But this figure, he makes me want to like him more. You know, he's imposing, he's built like a tank, his head doesn't look freakishly large on top of his scrawny body. He's got better articulation than the original Slash. He's an upgrade in every sense of the word. Along with this being a much better representation of Slash in the cartoon, all these accessories round out Slash's artillery, you know? Now you pretty much have everything that you ever wanted your Slash action figure to have, although it would have been nice if they would have included all of the original Slash accessories, because now, I mean, you have to have both versions of Slash to have everything. That's the only way your Slash will be complete. So usually right after this, I would go into the cartoon history of Slash, but the cartoon history I wrote is really long, so I'm going to leave it to the end of this video. And right now we're just going to go into cartoon accuracy with the original action figure so we can see which Slash is the best. Spoiler, this one. Looking at these two guys side by side is like looking at that annoying dweeby kid who lived down the street. He always started fights, but when you finally whacked him one, he'd run home crying and come back with his bigger, older brother, or most of the time his mom. Neither of these guys were built with the intention of being the Fred Wolf Slash. OG Slash here shares a lot of parts with Turtles in Time Slash, who, for the record, I think looks a lot better because his head doesn't look oversized. Proportionally, he looks great. But I mean, the shell on this Slash has that Turtles in Time shell, and that is not the shell you want. And this brand new Slash over here, he was either Toka or the NECA Archie TMNT Adventure Slash. I don't remember which one came out first. Here you have this carapace back here. It's the same on the Toka action figure, but this brand new Slash has a completely brand new upper shell. So that's great, because now finally he has the accurate shell we need for him to be super accurate. When it comes to proportions and scale, both of these guys have a similar height. They're roughly 4 heads tall. Pretty close for both of them. In the show, he's basically 4 heads tall too, right? Basically, in all these shots, 4 heads. Finding the right scale for Slash can be a little difficult because he actually doesn't spend a lot of time next to other important characters like the Shredder. But here you can see in the cartoon, he's roughly the same height as Rocksteady. Bebop is a little taller than him. And if you look at him next to the Turtles, I mean, he's just slightly taller than the Ninja Turtles. He's just much bigger than they are. Here you can see this toy next to all these guys, and yeah, it's pretty similar, I don't know, I know NECA just released this Bebop and Rocksteady, like, reprint or whatever you want to call it. I mean, it's a reissue of those figures, but some of the colors are a little different, especially on, like, Bebop's clothing, like his red jacket. But I honestly wish they would put out a Bebop and Rocksteady built off of these bodies. These bodies are fantastic, and I think that they look even more like the cartoon than the regular ones. I don't know, the proportions look so much more like the cartoon. And if you had Rocksteady in those clothes and the same height as Slash, like, that would be a perfect match right there. And Shredder would be the perfect height. And that Shredder, I know it's Adventure Shredder, but the Fred Wolf Shredder that's coming out that's pretty much that same body. Then, of course, you have Slash next to the Rogues from Night of the Rogues. And in this shot, you can see that he's around Leatherhead and Scumbug's height. He's shorter than Anthrax and up to about the bottom of Rat King's pecs. I would say in this lineup, I don't know, it doesn't really match it too well. Like, he's definitely a little taller than he should be next to the Rat King. Leatherhead here is very tall. Anthrax is very tall. He's pretty close to Scumbug. I mean, I don't know. I'm not really too bothered by this. I feel like, even if the scales weren't 100% with all these guys, they still look good next to each other. It's not really a problem. I don't think certain characters tower others, and they shouldn't. Like, to me, Leatherhead should be like a tall guy. And you don't even know how accurate they were drawing that lineup in the cartoon either. But I think this is all good. I think this all works really well together. The only problem is there's no Tempestra. Come on, NECA, get on this already. And just so you can get a better idea of how this guy scales with the rest of the Fred Wolf series, here he is with just some random dudes from the show. No dudettes. I can't believe that. I didn't include any chicks. Come on, Calla. Never mind. In the cartoon, Slash usually has 2 turtle pimples right in his nose. You see that quite a lot. And there's always like 3 on his cheeks that kind of surround his mouth right there. They did a pretty good job doing that exactly on these toys. They did add a 4th one here. I have to check my my reference and see if there's any shots with him with a 4th one right there. But even on this side, usually there's 3. I don't know. It just does a better job of framing the mouth here than this one. Like these 3 are shoved back here. And look at that. I didn't even realize I got so much like slop on this original one's face. Of course, he has this one giant yellow eye for whatever reason. And on his cranium, there are some bumps. They gave the brand new one a lot of bumps. I kind of feel like maybe the dome of his head is a lot bigger than you usually see in the cartoon. It's not distracting. It's just something you notice. It's just bigger. Another famous trait of Slash is he has 2 teeth on the one side and 1 tooth on the other. They did a great job of capturing that on both of these. Although I think the new one looks a little better because they're kind of like snaggle-toothed out a little bit. You know, they kind of jut out a little bit. One thing I will say is because his body is built bigger, I don't know, the proportion of his head just looks so much nicer. Like there's some weird things happening with this real one, like this weird little bump at the behind his head right here, and even this like kind of, I don't know, unattractive chicken neck or whatever you call that under here, underneath his chin. The brand new one, the proportions just look a lot nicer, a little more natural. It's like, I don't know, it's like they had to cram this gigantic head onto this little tiny body. You know, it just doesn't fit right. The plastron looks perfectly fine. In the show, like, he does have this, I'm going to call it the marginal shield because that's what it's called on the back. Really, I don't think turtles usually have that outline around the shell like that. They just have the bridge that goes from the front to the back. But in the cartoon, he does have this, as I said, marginal shield, if you want to call it that. It looks similar to this toy, although I would say in his first appearance, it appears more ruffled. Since the original one was built off of the Ninja Turtle bodies, he doesn't have that at all. Both belts look great. I love the purple and the light blue color. It just looks really nice, especially on the brand new one. I think it matches so well with the rest of his body. Although I will say, you know, what's the purpose of him having this belt? It kind of boggles the mind because, first of all, it like goes between his back and his shell. So that's kind of strange because the turtles actually, their belts actually do go around the shell, and they usually put their weapons in them. And yes, in the first appearance of Slash, he does put Shredder's swords into his belt. But I think that's the only time he ever really uses the belt for anything. It just kind of makes you wonder, like, does that belt keep his shell in place? Is he a fan of Dr. Wily? Oh, you know what? One thing that the original action figure has that's better than, I guess, the new one, is there's a notch right here in the belt. The brand new one does not have that, and he most definitely does have that notch in his appearances in the show. The back of the shell on the brand new action figure looks great. It matches. All the number of spikes is the same in the show as it is on this action figure. These costal shields, these segments on the back of the shell right here, there is the same number of them. Although I will say, throughout the episodes, the shapes of those change. You know, they're not very consistent. So, I mean, this is perfectly fine. You know, it works. It does what it's supposed to do here. I'm happy. The only thing I would say about the back here, and this is the carapace of the shell, I would say that this here, right here, the marginal shields, this outline little bit here of the shell, in the cartoon, it's not really segmented. There are some, I guess, creases or something like that on the bottom of the shell in a lot of the shots. But the whole thing itself is not segmented. It looks like it's only like a solid piece But here it's all segmented. And then, of course, on the original one, I mean, the shell does not look like the cartoon at all. I mean, it's a cool looking shell. I like it. I especially like it on the Turtles in Time slash. But if you want cartoon accuracy, it just does not hold up. Also, take a look at this shot from Donatello Trash's slash, where they accidentally drew the belt going around the shell, and then they must have realized it, so they colored it in the shell color. Like, they couldn't erase that. The arms, the shoulder pads, the elbow pads, the wrist pads, and the gloves, they all look fine. You know, I got no problems there. I will say, in the episodes, he does not have these bumps on his biceps or his thighs. But, I don't know, I think they work on this action figure because I think that they made such a big deal about putting all these bumps all over his face, you would expect them on the rest of his body. So I'm perfectly fine with them being on this guy. I could have went either way with that. He could have been smooth and it would have been fine. He could have bumps and it's perfectly good. The other thing I got to point out is in the cartoon, his skin tone should be roughly the same shade as the Ninja Turtles. This is quite a lot brighter. I do think that there are a couple of shots where his skin tone is brighter like that, but for the most part, I mean, he looks pretty much exactly the same as the guys. The other color I should talk about is the shoulder pads, the headband, the gloves, and the knee pads. Pretty much in all three of his appearances, they are gray, all right? I would assume that the shoulder pads are supposed to be metallic and whatnot. But there are a few shots in his first appearance where they do have that baby blue color. Most notably, the scene in which he meets Fenton Q Hackenbrush. They are baby blue like that. So it is accurate, but is it the accuracy that you want? Or do you want the, I don't know, 95% accuracy in the cartoon? I could go either way. It doesn't really bother me. Like I said many times before in this review, I do like the color scheme of the baby blue and the purple and even that green and the yellow. I think it all works together well. It's just, I don't know. It's a little subjective, I guess. Ooh, here's something I almost forgot to mention, and I would have hated myself in the morning if I didn't. But if you look at these shoulder pads right here, you know, there's nothing connecting them to his body. They're just sort of glued in place. And there's lots of shots in the show where the shoulder pads are just kind of there. You know, they're just stuck there. However, in many other shots, there's actually a strap there. And I thought maybe that strap might have just been in the first episode and then they forgot to include it later on. But no, it's in the other episodes too. When it comes to the legs, there's not really much to talk about. I mean, he's got spiked knee pads and he's got two toes. And I would say that, I don't know, the brand new feet look a little better than the original ones. The original ones I'm not totally sold on. I will say this, though. I very much prefer the spiked knee pads on the original slash. I like how pointy they are. The new ones are way too short and blunt. I mean, a lot of these designs were already included on the original action figure. I just don't think they were executed as good because of his scrawnier build. You know, it just looks so much better with this massive slash. The articulation on the new slash also is very similar to the original slash. However, it has 3 upgrades that make him superior. Number 1, he has double jointed elbows. This is a pretty good double jointed elbow. I think it crunches pretty well. It looks nice and flush. It's not weird like some double joints. Let's see. What's the next upgrade? Oh, the next upgrade is the better hip joint. You know, he's got the ball jointed hips. They work great. However, he's like one of the most slippery action figures I've ever gotten from NECA. Like, he's pretty loose. he falls over a little bit. The other upgrade is the original Slash and the original Ninja Turtle toys. I think there's like a ball joint here in this ankle. And I've never liked the original articulation that they had in those ankles. But the brand new one just has a hinge. It just has ankle rockers. It just makes it a lot better. And then other than that, you have a double joint in the neck here. You know, there's a ball in like the base of the head, and there's a ball in the bottom of the neck there. The shoulders have a hinge, and they can swivel around. There's a bicep swivel right there. As I mentioned, double jointed elbow. The wrists swivel, and then there's a hinge. The torso here, there's a little bit of like an ab crunch or whatever in here. I think it's a ball joint, but it's kind of hard to move that around a little bit. You can just kind of rotate it side to side. Or then we talked about the hips. Did we talk about the double jointed knees? The original one had double jointed knees, but these are great. And then, of course, the hinge and ankle rocker. And that's it. Nothing else going on with him. All right, so now we're going to do a somewhat large accessory-a-thon. In this, I'm going to discuss the items that were released with both versions of Slash and compare them and show the accuracy. I don't think there's that much of a difference between like the Binky, but some things like, you know, little baby Slash. There's some big differences there. I'm going to go over all of his weapons, discuss their purpose, talk about their accuracy with tons of reference from the show like I always do. And I'm also going to show whether or not both of these Slashes can hold all of these accessories. All right, so let's get started. Both Slashes included a backpack. This is nice because the backpack was included in the second appearance of Slash. That was Donatello Trash's Slash. In that episode, he uses the backpack to carry all of his very sophisticated weaponry. The original one was unremovable. I mean, maybe you could pop off the head and get this off of here, but I don't know. It's wrapped around these spikes pretty tight. Mine always pops out right here. You see how I have that hole? I complained about that earlier in the video, about this popping out of this hole here. I think I've seen other people's like completely pull off, and then the backpack won't even sit there unless you maybe super glue it back in place. I don't know, it just wasn't put together well. But this one, the strap seems to connect pretty sturdy there. You know, they must have learned from people complaining about it way back when. And the good thing about this one is you can very easily put it on and off Slash. You know, all you gotta do is lift up his arm and you can get that on there pretty easily. Like a glove. Oh, I guess one thing I should have mentioned was on the inside of this backpack, and I'm going to show the accuracy of this thing in a little bit, it has all these stripes, right? I would assume that that's supposed to be a pad for him to sit on his back. The original one does have that too. It's just kind of hard to see because it's so tight in there. I wouldn't necessarily say either of these backpacks is very accurate to the show. Like, it has all the major designs that you need on here, like sort of like this this sidewalk pathway right here, and this rocket peeking out from underneath the ground. These blocks on the side. But in general, I don't know, there's just something about both of them that's off, right? And I mean, first and foremost, the color is not correct, right? Because the backpack is definitely grayscale. I mean, it's not a question if it's baby blue or anything like that in that show. It's just always grayscale. Proportionately, like, I don't know, something seems off about this one, like the placement of these bits and pieces. Another thing I will say is, like, see how this these blocks, you have them on the front here, or the back, if you want to call it, and then it continues onto the side. Sometimes the animators will screw up, and they won't draw those blocks on the side of the backpack, and I'm pretty sure they're supposed to be there, because I think they're on more shots than they're not. They're definitely supposed to be on top of the backpack. I usually see them on top of the back. Like if you're looking at Slash from the front, you know, they usually always appear. It gets tricky with certain things in the show because, I don't know, there's just a lot of mistake and inaccuracies. I don't know. Usually the backpack appears very flat, so I would kind of say that's more of like the newer one. Like the newer one seems a lot flatter than the original one. But I think that the backpack also looks like it gets more narrow at the top here, up here, in the show. And that's definitely not what's going on here. I mean, this is almost just like a complete like square rectangle. Like 45-degree angles, but like this one definitely has like these nice narrow bits. As I said before, both of these backpacks have like this white pattern on the inside, which I assume is supposed to be padding. However, that is not what the inside of the backpack looks like. You know, there's always like this little door there that he's able to pull like a weapon out of, and it's usually only this one door. However, again, there seems to be quite a lot of shots of the backpack with that striped design on the inside. Mostly during the battle between Slash and Donatello in the electronics supply store. That's where you usually see that. But for the most part, I would say you see that trapdoor majority of the time. You see Slash on screen. But don't take my word for it. It's tough to gauge these things, you know, because sometimes the designs change from shot to shot, you know. It's not even just scene to scene. Literally the next shot things will be off. I should also mention that the freeze ray does not come out of that little door there. He pulls it out of somewhere else. I don't know. Both of these look very nice. Very cool design. Like I said, not super accurate, but I mean, both of them look really cool. And work well and sit on his body well. And I don't know, I think this Slash, Fred Wolf series Slash, I mean, I think he looks even cooler with the backpack. I probably would, even if I had him just being like a crazy dude, I would still probably always have that backpack on him, just because I like it. Up next is Slash, the evil pet turtle. You know, this is the original one right here, the bigger one, and this is the brand new one. And I gotta say, I like the original one more. I just like it because it's bigger. You can see all the details a lot nicer. I love those painted eyeballs. That's all good. But the new one, I don't know. First, if you're in like a dimly lit room, you really can't even tell that there's a difference between these spots on his back and the actual shell. I mean, in the cartoon, the shell is much more of a brown color than this. I mean, this looks like almost like the body and the shell are the same color, and then you have these lighter green spots right here for the highlights. So because of that, I wouldn't say that the color on this original Slash is more accurate, but I just like it better. I like all those spots all over the body. I don't know. He looks pretty good in my opinion. It is hard to move these things around. I don't want to stick my whole hand in here. I guess the good thing about having a smaller Slash is in the cartoon, he is kind of small compared to the Binky. So I guess I would say the smaller one, I don't know, both of them look fine next to this Binky. You know, I feel like both are a decent size. They don't look... I don't think this looks too big next to that, but I guess maybe that's more accurate on the right there. And this is the original Binky. The brand new Binky is shorter because it sits in the fishbowl. I guess that's the other thing is Big Slash maybe a little too big for the fishbowl. And little Slash here is a better size, I guess, for this, you know. This is the more humane Slash. He's not cramped or anything like that in there. It's good. Ooh, I almost forgot. Look at this. On the bottom of Slash right here, the original one has the plastering is painted really nice, but the brand new one, there's nothing. He's just a solid piece of plastic. If you want Bebop to carry around his little pet, you can do that very easily. As you can see, the brand new Slash fits pretty snug in the palm of his hand. How nice. I'm sure the original one does too. Yep, good. He's just, I mean, he's a little big. He doesn't have that cute little look that the original one did, but he's still good. Next is Slash's Binky. If you don't know what a Binky is just what Slash calls his little palm tree. This is Slash's favorite thing in the whole wide world, all right? Much of Slash's motivation and mayhem is caused because he just can't get his hands on one of these. Like, he really wants one, but something always comes up and always tricks him, and he just can't get one in his possession, you know. Poor Slash. Well, at first. In his second and third appearances, he never even mentions Binkies. It's like he doesn't care at all about it. Well, that's not true. He does say Binky in his second appearance, but very briefly. And I think it's only to trick Donatello. I feel like his love of palm trees is just like something that everybody knows about Slash. It even popped up in the Archie comics. You know, that Slash, he really loved palm trees too. As you can see, both of these palm trees, I mean, they look very similar. This thing it doesn't have a stand or anything like that. You really can't even prop it up. You know, it just falls over. So the only way you can, I don't know, show it off is by putting it in like the original Slash's hands. But the brand new palm tree, the brand new Binky, you know, it's got this very nice fish bowl here. Or turtle bowl, I guess if you want to call it there. And it plugs in place. It does fall out of the plug quite a lot. You know, it doesn't take much to actually knock this thing out. Of course, it's not going to do it because I'm on camera saying that it will fall out. Trust me, it does fall out when you move this thing around. But yeah, both of these look pretty good. And obviously this design here in this bowl is what you see in the beginning of the first appearance of Slash. And then, of course, later on in the episode when Slash is on the... this is going to drive me... Is it Space Scowl? Scowl. Not Scowl. Scowl. S-C-O-W. Space Scowl. He actually does find another palm tree, but that one is in a broken bowl. As you can see, both Slashes can hold their Binkies. But, I don't know. This Binky is very small. You know, it's way too small to actually have any kind of, like, hold in his hand. So the bigger one, you could probably prop it up a little better. Probably looks a little nicer in his hand because it is bigger. And now, on to the good stuff. The first device we gotta discuss is Slash's shield projector. In my opinion, this thing looks more like a rocket than it does any kind of defensive or shielding type of device. In the show, this thing is basically useless. You know, he pushes this top red button right here, and it sends out an energy field that covers only the front of the Channel 6 News building and only up to about 3 stories. Like, are there no fire exits in the back of the building that people could use to get inside? I mean, the Turtles use Mikey's grappling hook to climb over this thing. So, I mean, Mikey's grappling hook will make any object look useless if he can actually use it properly. The grappling hook usually has a failure rate of, 95%. So NECA's version here, it looks great. It looks fine, although there are some inaccuracies. Number one, I couldn't find any reference. In none of the shots do you actually see this stripe go all the way down the front of this thing. It kind of stops like right there. So that's something that's not accurate. This one also has 3 fins. And in every shot of this thing, it either has 4, or when he pulls it out of his backpack, it has 0. They must pop out or something. In my opinion, I think Slash probably holds this thing the best with his trigger fingers. Although it's a little tricky because of the size of this thing. It's like he can't grip the whole thing, like the circle of it. You just kind of have to maybe like play around with the wings of it to get it to fit in his hand right. I don't know. It's not the easiest. Sure. Sure. That works. And, you know, the original one, I don't know, it just kind of looks silly. It's kind of hard to get it in his hand, too. Oh, there we go. All right, so that worked. Up next is Slash's anti-gravitational beam. NECA kind of had to fill out some gaps with this thing because, I don't know, you only get a good look at it in one shot of the show. And other than that, when you see it again, it's smaller and at like a different angle. So, I don't know. You got to look at that one. Actually having the anti-gravitational beam in hand makes you appreciate its designs. You know, there are certain things about it that I didn't really notice in the show, but actually having it now, it's like, oh yeah, that's cool. Like, specifically, I'm talking about this like little rod here, and I think NECA did a really good job of, I think it's a separate piece, this whole thing right here. But this little rod is separate from the body, and I don't know, it just kind of makes you imagine like what's going on here. Like, do you pull this like little bit right here up? And if you pulled this up, does it pull the rod inside? Is this how you change the settings of this beam? Do you just pull that and move it around? I don't know. But this side right here, between the rod and this shield right here, it's a little different than what you see in the show. On the opposite side, it's just the same exact design. Same things happening here with the rod and all that kind of stuff. It actually sits in his trigger finger hand really well. You can actually get the trigger finger around the trigger. So that's good. And it seems like it's not hard to actually point this thing forward at people that you want to blast and send up to the ceiling. I don't know. It's a very, very neat gun. Although I will say this, this handle right here is much too big to fit in the original's hand. Like, he only has one gripping hand, and if I try to put that in that hand, it's going to stretch it out, and it's going to be a big problem. Slash, of course, uses the anti-gravitational beam as he enters the Channel 6 news building. He uses it to push around a lowly paid secretary, send her up a few feet. Although, things get a little confusing here, right? Because when he walks in the door, he tells her that, like, nothing can stand in the way of somebody with an anti-gravitational beam or whatever, right? And he shoots her, and he sends her up. But then as he's continuing to walk towards the steps, these two security guards come out. And he says, at that point, "My own invention, an immobilizer ray." But he's still holding the anti-gravitational beam, right? And in my opinion, an immobilizer ray should, like, immobilize somebody. It should, like, make them stop moving, but he shoots them with this beam, and it sends them up into the air, just like the anti-gravitational beam. Also, why would he call the anti-gravitational beam an immobilizer ray? I feel like there's something confusing going on there, and then as soon as he walks past them, he opens up the door, and he has his freeze gun in his hand. So, is the freeze ray an immobilizer ray? Because later on, it actually has the ability to freeze the Ninja Turtles in place and immobilize them? Or was it supposed to be some other weapon that wasn't included here in the show? I have no idea. Up next is the freeze gun or freeze ray, depending on who you ask. NECA says freeze ray. This is a pretty awesome weapon, and I'm really, really glad that they included it. I mean, first of all, it's just a gigantic. It is just such a large cannon. In the cartoon, Slash is able to either use this to blow people away from him, or to turn them into a block of ice. I feel like the details on this thing are fantastic, although it is missing a few. And we'll get to those, the main ones, in a bit. I think the closest reference they used while making this is this one right here where Slash is holding it. Although it's kind of weird because it looks as though there's no second handle and Slash is holding it underneath, kind of like a mixture of a rifle and this freeze ray gun. I don't know. Yeah. See, if you look at this this freeze ray in his hands, I mean that looks pretty much just like that. Like all the details on the side here, they all line up. Some of the the barrels look very similar, although on these inside barrels right here, there's like a red ring. You have these like I don't know pipe type arms going up to the triggers. I love the triggers look good too with those red buttons. But yeah, look at this thing. It's just massive. So the biggest exclusions on this gun right here is on top of this up here somewhere. There's actually supposed to be 3 red ridges or maybe 3 red buttons, and you see this in multiple shots of this. You see those 3 red buttons, and he actually pushes one of those buttons to collapse the freeze ray before he puts it into his backpack. So unfortunately, you're not going to see those in that shot that I showed you that I think they used for the reference. So that's probably why they are not here. Another exclusion is there's some shots, especially like when he's holding it sideways in that one. In that shot, there's actually some black stripes along the barrels. And then there's also some shots where there's black stripes on like the handles. And you don't see that on this toy either. Now, as I said, I do like this thing. Mine has a little bit of damage here. I don't know what exactly caused that. But it is a little tricky to actually get him to hold this thing. And I mean, like, it just looks cool. Like, it just looks so neat. Imagining him shooting this thing at people. But, I don't know. These arms here that connect the triggers to the gun, I don't know. It doesn't seem like a very pliable plastic. Like, it almost feels a little fragile. Like, I almost like fear that they're going to snap when you're trying to move them around. I bet there's somebody out there who actually has snapped this. But I mean, they had to use some type of hard plastic. They couldn't use like a rubbery type of thing because it's supposed to sort of keep this gun in place. But yeah, it just seems like that could be a problem down the line. If you're not careful, you're going to snap that. And look, original Slash can hold this thing too. But because he's not as big as the new Slash, it kind of... This stand right here doesn't actually connect to his body. And now, on to the old stuff. Original Slash had this tri-barrel blaster. That's what I like to call it. Although, technically, I guess it's a quadruple barrel blaster because it actually shoots a beam out of here, out of this one in the middle, and then this little bit that comes out the top right here that actually shoots a beam too. I don't know why you would want to shoot 2 beams going in the same direction, but, whatever. The cool thing about this in the show is these barrels, these 2 ones right here, they can actually angle outward and shoot at an angle. I kind of wish that NECA would have included like a new version of this where the barrels are angled outward, because you can't do that with this. They're actually sculpted into place. It just would have been nice. I've already discussed this and all the other accessories with the original Slash in my 2017 to 2022, or was it? Yeah, that like big accessories video that I had done. But this thing is good. There are some, I don't know, inaccuracies on the side here. Lots of times they'll actually flip the model of this gun when he's holding it. So certain bits that should be on the one side are on the other side. So this, I'm pretty sure, is what's supposed to be on this side, and it's unique. And then you go to the other side, and then you have like sort of this purple bar right here that kind of like it like, I don't know, it's got this wider bit down here on the bottom that goes to this side. I don't know, it's a cool design for a weapon. This weapon is supposed to actually be held with 2 hands. You can get him to do that. It's fine. Right? So let's see how it looks on the brand new Slash. So he can hold this thing pretty well. Although his grip is, because he sort of has like these like muscular stubby arms, you know, you can't really angle it out far from his body. Far. Remember, I went to speech when I was a kid. So I mean, it's pretty close to his body, but I mean, he kind of holds it close to his body in the show, so it's not that big of a deal. And it works. You know, it looks good. It's probably a little small. It probably could be a little bigger for this bigger Slash action figure, but you know, it still works. Here is Slash's Animalizer Ray. Now this thing is actually pretty accurate to the design in the show. There's just a few color variations, like this wheel right here is kind of red in the show. But I don't know, this is such a cool looking weapon. Very unique. Something I thought would have snapped already was these very thin, rubbery tubes. But I think this whole top piece is like I think the body right here is hard, and then this part is like this softer rubber that connects to this, and then it connects into here. So it's all, this is all one piece, and then the body is a separate piece. But it looks neat. He kind of holds it weird, the original one, because, I don't know, because of his fingers don't really wrap around the trigger finger. When it comes to the new Slash, I actually think his tighter gripping hands are better to hold this thing than the trigger finger. Like, the trigger finger hand is a little loose. I mean, this, you can't really get his finger around the trigger, and you can't really do that with the trigger finger either, but I don't know, I just think it holds it better. It's sturdier, and you should have no problem pointing it at people. What does the Animalizer Ray do in the cartoon? Well, the Animalizer Ray can actually turn beings of a certain type into animals of another type, right? Like he's, or I guess beings of another type, whatever. He uses it to turn Burn and Vernon into turtles, and later on he threatens to turn Donatello into a human. But then Donatello throws Burn and Vernon in the way, and they get turned back into humans. After all is said and done, do the Ninja Turtles steal the Animalizer and take it back to the sewer so they can turn Splinter back into a human? No. Donatello knocks it out of Slash's hand, and it falls on the ground and breaks into many pieces. It's kind of like the Ninja Turtles don't want Splinter to turn back into Hamato Yoshi. The last weapons to discuss are Shredder's dual Shaolin swords. Shredder never uses these, but Slash does. He actually pulls them off the wall in his first appearance when he's chasing after Bebop and Rocksteady. He wants to turn them into Warthog Shish Kebab and Rhinoceros Pate. I bet, I don't know, if you ever got hungry in Dimension X, people eat pig. I'm sure Shredder probably thought about it with Bebop, right? So the original Slash can hold these, you know, just fine. Oh, you know what he also does? He also cuts Leonardo's swords into pieces with these things, too. That's right. The original Slash, like I said, he can hold them, and he holds them well. In fact, most of the times, I don't know, whenever I had him on display, I had him holding these swords. He's got a pretty nice grip on them. The brand new Slash can indeed hold these Shaolin swords, although it's kind of loose when you first put them in there. You kind of have to push the handle into his fingers to get like an actual sturdy grip. I do think that they probably seem a little small. Like, I just kind of picture them to be bigger when you look at them in the cartoon. But he can hold them, you know, so that's good. I don't know, Slash is he looks cool holding these weapons. But look at this. Like, you see how his hips are sliding down? That's no good. It's like the same problem with Super 7 action figures. It's not as bad, but it's still like, you know, causing a little bit of a problem here. And finally, you have Slash's half-eaten pizza. Now, this design looks just like the pizza he's eating in the show. I think it's really great. He's eating that when April comes in and starts harassing him. The original Slash here holds it perfectly fine, actually. It fits it in his gripping hands really well. The new one, well, he can hold it too, although his reach isn't as far as the original one, so I don't know, you kind of have to angle the hands in a little bit so he can hold it with both hands. But it looks good. You know, he looks like he's definitely scarfing on this thing. Although what's the funniest thing to me is in the episode when he is eating pizza, he's just like shoving the whole thing in his mouth all at once. Now we get to move on to hands. The most exciting accessory of all, right? The original Slash, he didn't have any extra hands. He just had gripping hands. So, no fists. He was very much a disappointment to me at the time. I feel like every action figure should have like a gripping hand and a fist, at least, you know, especially with this Ninja Turtle line. But the brand new Slash, he actually does. He's got a set of fists. Perfect. He also has one set of tighter gripping hands. You could put a lot of his stuff into these tighter gripping hands. And then he has the trigger finger gripping hands. So things like the anti-gravitational beam, you could put that in there. And that's it. You know, 6 hands all together. 3 different sets. All good. Another brand new thing for the original Slash is he has an extra head. Right, so you got this more of like a, I don't know, standard Slash head. You know, it's just like a normal expression. Nothing too special. He doesn't look too angry. He looks a little angry. He doesn't look happy. He just looks, I guess he looks a little menacing. His eye is still kind of like, you know, he's got the angry eye and the one eye that you can see. So that's a good face. You know, the mouth is good. You can see his tongue in there. And his teeth sticking out. Now, the extra head here, why, this is more of a dumb Slash head. I mean, look at him. He's sticking his tongue out. You know, he looks like a dope. Although I will say this, even though he looks like stupid, I feel like he's still got like that angry eye there. So he almost looks like he's sinisterly dumb. He's stupid, and he's angry about it. He's gonna come after you. And I actually had a hard time trying to get this on the head, and I couldn't even, or the body, and I couldn't even get it in there all the way. It seems like the peg or the ball is like stuck on some kind of ridge in there. I don't know. I probably have to warm it up. But to be honest with you, I'm probably never going to use this head. I'm probably always going to stick with the standard Slash head. And look at this. When I pulled this out, it like kind of pulled a little bit of the vinyl out with it. But it was tough trying to get this head off to begin with. So, you know, you should probably warm this head up if you haven't already. I think out of all these accessories, the grand champion is the freeze ray. It just looks so cool. It's just so massive and neat looking. You can tell Slash is really excited to use this thing too. Like, look at his face. So if you were to ask me, hey Gary, are there any items that they should have included that they didn't include with Slash here? There's only one that I can think of, and that's Slash's Harry Potter Holly Wand. You know, look at that. He uses this wand to remove some bolts from this thing so he can crush Donatello with some logs. That's the only thing, but look, I got one right here. This is what this is what I'm using. Zap. Mine doesn't work. Just for the hell of it, here's Slash next to all of the other 1990 action figures that made it into the Fred Wolf series. I know what you're thinking, you know, Ray Fillet here, he wasn't in the Fred Wolf series, but look, this Archie Ray Fillet is the best thing we've got so far. You know, maybe down the line, NECA will produce a what if Fred Wolf Ray Fillet with a thinner ink line. I mean, they could. I mean, he looks like he could fit in perfectly with them. Just give him a thinner ink line, maybe change the colors a little bit to make it look more like the toy, since a lot of their designs are very toy accurate, not including Slash, but like Muckman, Scumbug, and all that kind of stuff. You could easily make him a what if Fred Wolf figure. The other thing is Napoleon Bonafrog. But I explained in my Napoleon Bonafrog Colossus of the Swamps review, I kind of think them singling out Napoleon in that episode and making him a giant was sort of their way of, I don't know, showcasing the toy. Obviously, he doesn't look like this at all, but I kind of feel like them mutating him to a giant Colossus was kind of their way of, I don't know, giving some spotlight on this action figure. So maybe you could do like a cartoon version of that, but I mean, this is good. This is what it was. Then, of course, you've got Pizza Face. He was never in the show. And Panda Con, he wasn't in the show, but if you're up on your toy news, you know that NECA is actually putting out like a what if Fred Wolf series Panda Con. And I'm pretty excited about that. I'm really looking forward to getting that because, I don't know, I like the original action figure. I actually own every single PandaCon comic book at the moment. I plan on doing somewhat of a history about it when that action figure comes out to explain where he came from and maybe try to figure out how Dave Garcia came in contact with the Ninja Turtles and stuff, or Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird. He actually did some work for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Adventures comics. But I don't know. I'll probably dig around and see if I can find out any kind of interviews with him where he might explain more information, how he hooked up with those guys. But, I'm excited to get that action figure. And then, of course, you have Fugitoid here. And look, Fugitoid, he was never in the cartoon, but I wish he was, man. Because look at how awesome this action figure is. Look at all the colors. I love that bright blue and the reds and the golds and the blacks. Everything about this just looks amazing. All this extra detail on his body. There's just so much contrast on him. I think I know this might be controversial. I don't know. I find this design way more exciting than the actual Mirage Fugitoid. I like Fugitoid in the comic books, but I mean, he's just a plain silver robot. I think that's cool. Sometimes simplicity is good. But also, if you are a fan of the Playmates action figures, excessive detail is something you're probably interested in. And I would love to see him reimagined as one of these Fred Wolf action figures. And here he is in a lineup of all the Slashes that I own. When you compare him to all these other guys, his skin complexion is just so much brighter than everybody else's. I mean, look at the skin tone on these guys. Super, super dark. He looks cool in the grand scheme of things of this, Slash collection here. But I don't know. My favorites will always be the Archie Slash, and then I would have to go with original Slash, and of course, Super 7's Ultimate Slash. That I almost kind of feel like that Ultimate Slash might be my favorite Ninja Turtle Ultimates action figures. There's just something about him that seems so cool. And the glow-in-the-dark Slash is definitely my favorite glow-in-the-dark Super 7 action figure. The colors and everything look great. All of these Slashes look great. Except for, the 2012 one. He's just way too small compared to how he looked in the show. I would love for NECA to create a in-scale Slash that would go with their new Ninja Turtles. I think at this point I'm actually more excited about NECA's 2012 toys because they look so TV accurate, more so than I am excited for Super 7's 2003 Ninja Turtles, which I haven't even pre-ordered any of those yet. But I don't know. I just think of the problems that Super 7 has had in the past, and I just can't really get too excited for that line. I probably will pick up Leonardo just so I can have a Leonardo from that line, because I think Leonardo usually makes the best Ninja Turtle action figures. Even though he's not my favorite turtle, I think he makes the best one. But after that, I don't know. Maybe I'll pick up a Triceraton if they make one. But back to Slash here. He looks good. They all look great. Now, I know there exists a Loyal Subjects Slash that I do not own. He looks okay, but I don't know. I didn't buy into the Loyal Subjects action figures. There's too much stuff to collect already, and I bought one of the early Michelangelos that they had released, and I don't know, I just wasn't too happy with them. I just would rather stick with NECA and whatever Super 7 puts out that's actually good, you know? I'm trying to think what else. I did see a Pop today, a Slash Pop in Target, but I decided not to buy him because I'm not a big fan of Pops. But out of all these Slashes, which is your favorite Slash? Let me know. Like I said, I never had the original Slash when I was a kid, but all of these make up for it 40 years later. The somewhat new NECA Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Fred Wolf Series Ultimate Slash is a fantastic remake of everybody's favorite evil turtle from Dimension X. The original came out all the way back in 2020, and in that time, NECA sculptors have improved. You know, they're making these action figures more accurate than ever, and they've upgraded the articulation, most notably the hip articulation, which was awful back in the day. However, this Slash, the hip articulation didn't pan out so well because he basically has Super 7 hips. You know, they slide all over the place. When I was making these action shots, it was tricky trying to get him to stand up because he just kept on falling over. It was really tough to try to balance him on one leg, you know, for running purposes or just leaning over to pick up an object. Not to mention, I never could get his thigh swivel to really work, and every time I would try to rotate the leg a little further than I should, the leg would pop off the ball. You know, it was easy to put it back on, but that was a problem. In my opinion, the color of this guy looks good, but I could understand if you don't think it's very accurate, or maybe it throws you a little bit being so bright compared to how he appears in the show. On the plus side, all the accessories are amazing. I especially love the freeze ray gun. The anti-gravitational beam is a good looking weapon too, but man, that freeze ray is pretty fantastic. When you get right down to it, I'm really happy that NECA decided to take another stab at Slash. You know, there's lots of times toy companies put out new versions of action figures and I feel like they're a cash grab, but I think this action figure was definitely worth the money, and I'm happy I picked him up. So now that I've discussed everything that there is to talk about this really cool looking Slash action figure, now it's time to talk about his 3 cartoon appearances in excessive detail. I probably talk way too much, but, you know, I hope you enjoy. The maniacal mutant from Dimension X appeared in 3 episodes of the classic TMNT Fred Wolf series. First, he appeared in the Season 4 episode Slash, the Evil Turtle from Dimension X. That was on September 22nd, 1990. It was a Saturday. I remember it specifically because I watched it with my dad, and my dad was upset that Slash was breaking shit. He didn't want me, a 6-year-old, to toss my big wheel through the window. Now, one thing I find interesting about Slash appearing in Season 4 is that Slash was a 1990 action figure, but most of the other 1990 figures appeared in Season 5. Mondo Gecko, Mutagen Man, Muckman, Napoleon Bonafrog, in a giant form instead of like a different type of frog form, and also Wingnut and Screwloose appeared in Season 5. Eventually, in Season 7, we got Scumbug and Triceraton, but it seemed like they were really pushing those 1990 action figures during Season 5. The Season 4 episode, Rebel Without a Fin, that actually was supposed to include Ray Fillet, but Ryan Brown and Stephen Murphy, co-creators of Ray Fillet, objected to him appearing in the show. I think it's because they were going to make him a bad guy, from what I read. So instead, we got that generic fish-looking mutant Ray. As Slash opens up, Mikey tries to tell the other turtles that he's seen some unusual businessmen down in the sewers. The other turtles don't believe him, and Donnie suggests that maybe they're maintenance men, but as it turns out, it's both a businessman and maintenance men, so everybody was right. The turtles unlawfully attack these workers who are demolishing the small room in the sewers. Act first, ask questions later. That's what Splinter always teaches, right? Well, Turns out the guys actually have a reason to be suspicious, because when Leo asks the businessman right here for an official city ID, the businessman threatens that in a few days, all of the sewers will belong to Donald J. Lofty. See, these turtle cartoons are making references that are still relevant today. This businessman is actually Fenton Q. Hackenbrush. I've been trying to remember Hackenbrush, but I always just keep on thinking of Hack and Slash. Recently, he's been put in charge of development for Donald J. Lofty Enterprises. According to one of April's news stories, he's begun some rather unusual projects since joining the company. These include the controversial Space Scow, which was designed to carry millions of tons of trash into space. Hackenbrush says that it's their solution to the city's mounting garbage problem, which, doesn't sound too bad. But when he's asked about the sewers, Hackenbrush claims that they've offered to refurbish the city's entire sewer system in exchange for the rights to develop small portions of the sewer for commercial use. Best of all, he says it'll flush out the Ninja Turtles so they can finally put the turtles behind bars. So, as you can imagine, the turtles aren't too happy with this guy, and they unsurprisingly decide that something shady must be happening at Lofty Enterprises, so they leave the sewers to go check it out. Over at the Technodrome, Krang and Shredder are admiring their latest creation, a new supercharged mutagen. With this, they can create an army of super mutants. No force on Earth will be able to stop them. Look at Krang's eyes here. The veins really stand out. Kind of like him and Shredder just got done smoking some techno-endo. Bebop and Rocksteady get excited that the Technodrome crew may finally have a fighting chance against the Turtles. And of course, in their excitement, Bebop breaks some of Krang's equipment. Bebop should be more careful around Krang's pointy balls. As punishment, Shredder commands them to clean out all of the Technodrome's lower decks. Now, I like this shot right here a lot. This room is a very cool looking room, but I like the next shot even more. Here you can actually see the many levels of the Technodrome all at once. However, I will say that I don't like how it pans from left to right. Like you're looking at the bottom level on the left and the top is on the right. It's weird. Like they screwed up when they shot it. It just doesn't make any sense because when you first look at it, you kind of have to figure out what's going on here. But don't worry, I fixed it for you. So here you can see the top level. That, of course, has the portal room with Krang's, throne. And then it just kind of works its way down to the bottom. Like, seriously, they had to make a mistake when they did that. They did not shoot it the right direction. Somebody should have been fired back in 1990 for that. Down in these disgusting lower decks, Bebop and Rocksteady hatched the perfect scheme. If they have their own mutant, they could sit back and get some rest and relaxation while the mutant does all of their dirty work. And that's when Bebop reveals that he's been keeping a secret pet turtle this whole time. I don't know how Rocksteady never noticed this in their bedroom. I guess it is disgusting. Maybe Bebop could hide that turtle somewhere in this wreck. It kind of looks like there's either a table umbrella or a flagpole up in the top bunk. Shredder should have put his foot down months ago. So, as a normal turtle, Slash is very interested in his binky. Bebop even says that it's his favorite thing in the whole wide world. And what's a binky? Well, it's a little tiny palm tree. They never explain how Rocksteady got Krang's supercharged mutagen. I like to think that maybe he stole it while Krang was watching some soap operas. But he pours that supercharged mutagen on Bebop's pet turtle Slash, and it causes him to grow in size. Slash's first words are, "Daddy? What am I doing here? What's going on?" Kids are always ungrateful. You do what you can to raise them right, and they're still unhappy. Rocksteady tells Slash that he's got to clean up for them, and of course Slash refuses. So Bebop takes Slash's binky and he runs off with it. Bebop plans on using the binky as motivation to get Slash to clean up, which is a bad idea because, as you'll see in a little bit, Slash is pretty temperamental. Bebop is going to learn that it doesn't matter if Slash is his pet. Slash is going to pound the shit out of this warthog. Down in the sewers, the turtles find Hackenbrush again, and they overhear him tell a group of other businessmen, not maintenance men this time, that they're going to turn the sewer into luxury condominiums. I was looking at this huge puddle of piss and diarrhea over here, and I thought, wouldn't that be a nice place for a sofa bed? The guys fear that the city will be out of a sewer system, and more importantly, they'll be out of a home. These turtles, they might just be deadbeats. I just don't think they want to pay rent. So once again, the turtles confront Hackenbrush, and he runs off like a wuss. The turtles then call up April and tell her that they have proof that Fenton Q. Hackenbrush's sewer plans are a fraud. They tell her to meet them at the Flying Pizza Inn. Back at the Technodrome, Bebop and Rocksteady dress Slash up in armor and tell him to get to cleaning. Because, when I'm dusting, I like to put on my spiked knee pads too. Bebop says that he can have his binky again after he gets done cleaning up. Slash kind of does a half-assed job and asks for his binky again, very aggressively. Bebop says that he has to sweep the floor first. So, instead of sweeping, Slash blows a mighty wind, which picks up all the dust in the room. This causes Bebop to cough and drop Slash's binky down a grate. Oh, bad move, buddy. Because now, Slash freaks out and he starts breaking things. Tables will not suffice, however. As Slash wants to break the two mutants who are responsible for his unhappiness. He was happy as a baby turtle, and now he's big, and he can't have his binky. Maybe you can relate. Don't you remember when you got older, and your parents threw you out and told you to get a job, and then when you were gone, they threw away all your turtle toys? So, meaning to cause as much damage as possible, Slash runs over and grabs Shredder's dual Shaolin swords. And he gets ready to make rhino ribs and pork chops, but Bebop and Rocksteady lead him to the portal. Lucky for them. Before leaving, he does slice this really cool hole through the door. I like the way that looks. And he roughs up Bebop a little bit. It almost kind of looks like he could have gouged him here, but no, he didn't. He just puts Bebop's head through this panel, which is also kind of funny. So Bebop and Rocksteady trick Slash into thinking his binky is beyond the portal. So he jumps through. And now he's in New York City. And he just immediately starts tearing up the place. It's going to look even worse than it already does. One of the first things he does is he picks up a post office collection box. And those things are bolted down to the ground too. So this guy is, he's pretty strong. And he chucks it through the window on the other side of the street. As if things weren't bad enough with Slash, Fenton Q. Hackenbrush is also getting ready to cause some mischief because he's standing around with 4 mock turtles. He wants these fake turtles to perform a bank robbery or a holdup, but these dudes must be white-collar criminals or something like that because they only know crimes that are, I guess, non-violent. They know embezzlement and credit card fraud. Theft, you don't really have to try that hard to commit. This is actually a pretty funny scene. I do like the voice acting and just the exchange between everybody. Fortunately for Hackenbrush, since his fake turtles aren't up to snuff, Slash shows up. And now finally, Hackenbrush has someone he can use to frame the turtles. He doesn't look anything like them, but, close enough, right? Slash asks Hackenbrush if he has his palm tree, but unfortunately, Hackenbrush says no. And when he does, it seems as though Slash is getting ready to inflict some bodily harm on him. But then Hackenbrush says that he can get him one. He'll even send him to Florida, where there's lots of palm trees. All Slash has to do is go to the city's Freedom Bell and smash it. Smash everything on the way there. And so, he does. Slash heads for the Freedom Bell, and he starts smashing cars on the way. And this is just funny. He's not even moving. He's just standing there smashing the car, taking his time. In the very next scene, the Turtles are walking down the street, and an army of angry New Yorkers charge after them for the damage they think that they've done to their property. So I guess Slash must have picked up the pace or something like that. The guys have no idea why they're being blamed for all the property damage. What's funny is, like, right in the beginning of this scene, Raph gets his coat hooked on something, so he's got to take his coat off. And then real quick, he doesn't have any pants on. And then he's back to having the pants and the coat off. At the flying pizza oven, April gets annoyed that the Turtles are late. You know, she's got a deadline. She's got to get moving. Now let me ask you this. Does anybody else out there think that this pizza chef looks a little bit like Bern Thompson? Just a little bit? You know, did they not want to pay someone to design another character? Back to Slash. I like how Slash here punches out the lights one by one. There's just something so pleasing about poof, poof, poof. Like everything clicks really nice. He smells something good, so he runs into the flying pizza oven. And this scene right here is probably the saddest thing ever because April mistakes him for one of the Turtles. I mean, he doesn't look anything like them. He's much more muscular. He actually has some teeth. The Turtles usually don't have teeth other than a few episodes in like season 1 and some other mistakes. Usually they don't have teeth at all. And sometimes you'll even see them kind of like draw red over the teeth lines to fix mistakes they made when they were animating these shows. So yeah, Slash has teeth and the Ninja Turtles do not, other than a few episodes. I like how Slash eats pizza here too. He just folds it in half and just shoves it in his mouth. This must be why April's so confused. She probably sees the guys eat pizza like this at every meal. But whatever, April doesn't take a hint, and she decides to nag Slash for information about Hackenbrush, and he responds in the manner you would expect. Rage and violence. He chases her out of the pizza shop and into her news van, and then he tries to destroy it with her inside of it. Luckily for April, she doesn't get hurt, but the news van, I mean, it is smashed beyond repair. And what's funny is Channel 6's #1 star reporter still thinks Slash is one of the guys. Yeah, I'd like to see Michelangelo do that. Back at the Technodrome, Shredder and Krang find Bebop and Rocksteady's mess in the portal room, and they say what every other parent would say. What the hell are you guys doing in here? No, they just ask what's going on, and then Bebop and Rocksteady confess. Shredder and Krang, though, you know, they're not too mad. They're just disappointed. They're disappointed that the Bebop and Rocksteady let Slash get away. They should have kept him inside of the Technodrome so Shredder and Krang could use him for world domination or whatever other plots they've got. So now, Bebop and Rocksteady have to go to Earth to find Slash. Shredder and Krang send Bebop and Rocksteady in a Techno Wing, which is actually a pretty cool looking ship. You know, it really, I think it only shows up here. I don't know if it appears in any other episodes, but it's pretty neat. And obviously Techno Wing is just a ripoff of X-Wing. Back on Earth, the guys run into April, and she freaks out, you know. She tells them to stay back because one of them turned her van into a sardine can. Like, come on, April. How stupid can you be already? Like, notice how none of these turtles have spikes, or like I said, they don't have teeth. They don't have disgustingly long toenails. In a short amount of time, though, you know, April comes to her senses, and the guys in April realize that there's a 5th turtle in New York. And no, it's not April from TMNT Adventure Special number 12, is it? No, it's not Kirby from the unmade 4th Ninja Turtle movie. It's not Zack, the 5th turtle, you know, the little annoying kid. It's not Toka. It's not Jenica from IDW. It's not Stephen Murphy and his fantastic blog that doesn't exist anymore. No, it's Slash. And April tells them that she overheard him say that he was heading for the Freedom Bell. Now, finally, only 15 and a half minutes into the cartoon, we get our first Turtles versus Slash confrontation. In the blue, orange, red, and purple corner, we have the Ninja Turtles, Pizza Eater Extraordinaires, and current sewer squatters. And in the gray, sometimes baby blue in this episode corner, we have Slash, Lover of Palm Trees, and April Agitator. Both have proven to be able to easily defeat Bebop and Rocksteady, but who will win this exciting Terrapin bout? You probably already know, but Slash mops the floor with them, you know. He's a pretty strong guy, and he's a little slow, but he just tosses them around. I mean, sometimes he's just like standing there, barely even moving, and they just can't put a dent in him. Donatello breaks one of his bows on his back, and then he kind of funnily grabs Donnie by the belt and tosses him aside. And he kind of throws Donatello specifically around a lot in these 3 episodes, so this is the first time, right here. Raph and Leo both attack him at the same time, but again, Slash is easily able to lift both of them and toss them like a paper towel or something like that. And of course, Mikey, he tries to use his grappling hook, and as always, Slash grabs the grappling hook, pulls on it, and throws Mikey. Pretty much just like every episode where Michelangelo tries to use the grappling hook on a villain. I kind of wish I started paying attention a long time ago, like how often that happens, and compile a list of how many times Michelangelo successfully uses his grappling hook and how many times he gets hurt because of some kind of grappling hook mess up. Next, Leonardo tries to take on Slash by himself, and Slash chops Leo's swords in half. Much like Michelangelo with his grappling hook, Leonardo has a very high failure rate when it comes to using his swords. I mean, he can usually cut through the foot soldiers and everyday objects, but every time he's up against some big bad villain, his swords get destroyed and, he gets tossed to the side like a wimp. It's kind of sad because Leonardo is supposed to be, the leader and the most competent turtle. I like the face right here on Leonardo when Slash throws him away. Now, an interesting thing to note here is during this fight, Slash said that he is the only mutant turtle who is a box turtle. Now, with all the turtles out of commission, or all wet inside the fountain, Slash is able to cut down the Freedom Bell in an act that's most unpatriotic, and he tosses it over the turtles. They say that they catch it, but I mean, that thing looks pretty heavy. How are you catching that thing? After the turtles are covered, Slash leaves to find Hackenbrush. He heads to Lofty Towers, I guess. What do you call it? I can't remember if they had the name for this building. It's Hackenbrush's building, so I guess it would be Lofty Enterprises. But Slash confronts Hackenbrush's secretary, and she says that he's at the Space Scow launch. So, of course, Slash heads over. While Slash is bothering his secretary, Hackenbrush is being interviewed again by April O'Neil. She begins to accuse him of hiring Slash to destroy the Freedom Bell, and of course he denies it. But then Slash actually shows up, and he picks Hackenbrush up in the air and says, "Give me my binky, I destroyed the Freedom Bell for you, you son of a bitch, give me what I want." As this is happening, the turtles are able to free themselves from underneath the Freedom Bell, and I like how they're like, "Oh, we caught it, we saved the Freedom Bell," and then they just kind of toss it to the side like it's nothing. Again, just like when they were talking to April, the turtles don't actually have to track Slash down because as they're walking down the street, they just see April's newscast and they learn that Slash is, of course, at the Space Scow. So just as the Ninja Turtles are watching this on TV, Bebop and Rocksteady show up in that Techno Wing. And they don't even get a chance to fight the turtles or anything like that. The Ninja Turtles kick them out of their ship and then they steal it so that they can travel to Slash in a flash. Back at the Space Scow, Slash has lost it, He's really upset that Hackenbrush won't give him a palm tree. And he says that he's going to crash the Space Scow into the city and cover it in garbage. Well, a little more garbage than what's already there. Now, if you were curious, a scow is a flat-bottomed boat, like those big trash barges you see. Now, I don't think I've ever heard it called a garbage scow or anything like that. I've always heard it just being like a garbage barge or a trash barge. So scow is a new word for me. See, I'm learning something from the Ninja Turtles. Slash takes off in the scow, and boy, isn't it lucky the guys just stole that Techno Wing? They fly parallel with the scow, and then Mikey is able to use his grappling hook successfully this time. He throws it, hooks it onto the scow, and then him and Donatello leap aboard. Donnie and Mikey enter, but then they get their butts kicked again. Look, Slash is just way too powerful for them. Now, what's funny here is Mikey decides to use pizza as a way to distract him because he remembers that April told him that Slash likes pizza. So he picks up this box of pizza, and Donatello heads towards the controls. And what's funny here is they accidentally put the Donatello layer in front of the Michelangelo layer. So the perspective of Donatello gets really, really small in front of giant Michelangelo. I love when animation mistakes make it into cartoons like that. That's funny. So Donatello runs to the front and he sends the scow upwards so it won't crash into a building. And then one of my favorite lines in this episode happens, right? I think Pat Fraley does a really good job as Slash in this episode. You know, there's just something about it. It comes off as aggressive, but you know, he doesn't sound dumb to me. He sounds kind of like just kind of simple and straightforward or something. And one of my favorite lines is when Slash grabs the box of pizza out of Michelangelo's hands. He goes, "What? No pizza?" I can't even do it, but he sounds so legitimately upset and shocked. And like I said, Pat Fraley does an amazing job in this episode. In a fit of anger, Slash smashes the controls because he's sick of everybody tricking him. Donatello and Michelangelo are able to climb out of the hatch, and then they lock Slash inside. Man, that's cruel, guys. Real cruel. But don't worry. Slash finally has a happy ending here, right? He finds a binky in the piles and piles of trash, and just before it actually heads into deep space, Shredder opens up a portal to the Technodrome. In the Technodrome, Slash is not interested in the Shredder or Krang, and he empties all the garbage into the Technodrome. And then the ship blasts through the Technodrome wall and travels through Dimension X. Now, the end of this episode for him is kind of retconned in the next episode, but kind of what they said on the back of the box is what happens here. But as you'll see, it actually gets changed. Now, back on the turtle side of things, just to wrap things up here, they snitch on Hackenbrush. They talk to Donald J. Lofty, who's actually a pal of theirs from some other episodes, and they tell him that he's planning on making the sewer into a bunch of condominiums. And so Lofty fires Hackenbrush. I like how it looks like he's spitting in his face, too, when he's yelling at him. It's funny. So, you know, I got to make a little correction here from what I said in the beginning of this review. You know, I actually kind of like Slash's character a little bit more than I remembered from here, you know? He's not just some dumb guy who's, like, trying to smash things all the time. I mean, sure, he is kind of. But, I don't know, there's just seems to be a little more complexity to him. Like, you almost start to feel for the guy that everybody's trying to use him and just won't give him what he really wants. I think in the next episode, Donatello trashes Slash. They kind of make you think he's a lot dumber than he actually is. So, up next, the season 6 episode, Donatello trashes Slash. This episode opens with the guys getting ready to eat pizza in the sewers, of course, you know. Mikey just made marshmallow octopus and chili pepper pizza. Man, that is quite a combination. But before the turtles can scarf anything down, Donatello shows up to unveil his brand new automatic pizza slicer. Why he didn't automatically think this was some kind of death bot, I'll never know. But Donatello turns on the automatic pizza slicer, and what's funny is he brags that this thing will cut pizzas in no time. Like, have you ever cut a pizza? It takes 2 seconds. He should have spent his time working on something that's actually a problem, you know. The machine starts to go a little haywire, and Donatello tries to shut it off, but unfortunately, after he shuts it off, it still has enough power to chop up his favorite bow. Feeling defeated by the failure of some of his most recent inventions, Donatello decides to stay in the lair and clean up, while the other 3 guys head to Vinny's for some pizza. So Splinter comes in and he tries to cheer him up and teach him a lesson. He tells Donatello he must learn to turn his failures into victories. And the only way one learns is by making mistakes, Solid information. He tells him before the day is over, he'll understand what he means. So even if Donatello's name wasn't in the title, you already know that this episode is going to be like a Donatello redemption episode where somehow his machines actually are going to do something good. So Donatello finishes cleaning and he sits down to watch the boob tube. And on the news, he sees two things that alarm him. First, Vernon announces that the city's zoo opened up a new turtle habitat in the reptile house. Now, that's a good thing for turtles everywhere, but the problem comes at the end when Vernon thinks the cameras are off. He says smelly reptiles aren't worth the money. He's repulsed by them. This really upsets Donatello. He gets very offended by this, and he's about to go downtown to give Vernon a piece of his mind, but then April comes on the screen, and she announces that a UFO just landed in Midtown. And even more shocking, a strange turtle-looking creature exited the ship, and he's carrying advanced weaponry. Donatello thinks that it could be Slash, but he's not sure, He says that Slash is dumb as mud. Up on the surface, Donatello finds the space scow,
And he knows then and there that Slash has indeed returned to Earth. He starts to search for him, but luckily, Slash hasn't gone far.
Slash has broken into Glitch and Sons Electronics supply shop. Now, what's kind of funny here is Slash does a little bit of a fake out, The first thing he does is he mumbles a little bit and he's like, Blinky. But then when Donatello questions why he's in an electronics store, Slash reveals his recent personality shift. He says he needs the electronic equipment to complete his trans-frequency flux oscillator. And he starts to fire this very cool-looking tri-barrel blaster at Donatello. Donatello managed to get one good strike in on Slash, and this knocks Slash's blaster out of his hand. Now, I just want to point out that right before he actually hit the weapon, there's a frame where Donatello is on the wrong layer, just like in the last episode. This is also pretty much the last time where Donnie or the other turtles get the jump on Slash. Here Donatello's knocking the blaster out of his hand. But other than that, the turtles don't really attack Slash. Slash immediately grabs Donatello and he tries to do a Turtles in Time throw right through the camera and into a wall. Here's a pretty cool part too where Slash actually does something clever. He does a quick little calculation in his head and then he throws a doorstop. It bounces off the wall and some other objects a little bit, and then it hits over these bottles, and these bottles leak, and whatever's leaking from these bottles melts a metal chain. And that almost drops a giant piece of equipment on Donatello, almost crushing him. Now tell me, what were they keeping in an electronics store that could easily eat through a metal chain like this? Are those bottles of acid? Slash uses his blaster to chase Donnie out into the streets, and Donnie uses his bow to jump over a car, so everybody's being productive in this episode. Now, when Donnie jumps over the car, he leaves his bow on the opposite side of the vehicle, and then when Slash blows up the car, the bow blows up with it. So that's two bows that Donnie lost in this episode. Like, where the hell does he get the time to sand all these things down? And what's he building these out of? Just cheap plywood he's finding in the sewers? Like, counting the one he broke on Slash in the last episode, that's 3 altogether so far. And I think it's fair to say that Donnie doesn't respect wood. So, once again, Slash picks up Donatello like he's nothing, and he tosses him right into a construction zone. Next, Slash pulls out his favorite Harry Potter wand so he can locomotor some bolts and bury Dawn under some logs or something. Luckily for Dawn, he was buried, but he wasn't crushed. So that's the good side of things here. I would say even though Slash has gained some extra level of intelligence, his battle strategy just repeated. Twice in a row, he tried to shoot at Dawn with his blaster, then he threw him, and then he tried to crush him. After this, Slash leaves to head to Channel 6 because he thinks that he'll be able to finish his trans-frequency flux oscillator there. When he arrives outside the building, he uses his shield projector to assure that no one can enter the building or leave. After he heads inside, he uses his anti-gravitational beam to harass the receptionist and also put 2 security guards in their place. Now, what's a little confusing here is he just talked about the anti-gravitational beam when he was talking to the receptionist. But after he uses it on the 2 police officers, he says, "My own invention, an immobilizer ray." And the gun looks a little different, but I mean, he moved them. It's not like they got stopped in their tracks. They weren't immobilized. But then right afterwards, he immediately pulls out this freeze gun. And he uses that freeze gun to blow some Channel 6 news lackeys away, but later on he uses it to freeze people. So is the immobilizer ray the freeze ray? I don't know. He's talking a lot, but things aren't clicking there with the immobilizer versus the anti-gravitational beam. So anyways, while this is all happening, the guys find Donatello. They contact him with a turtle comm, and he told them where he was. They went. They successfully dug him out of some rubble. And the turtles just start giving him crap, They can't believe that he was beaten by Slash, as if their razzing earlier about his invention wasn't bad enough. Leo even says, "You were beaten by the dumbest turtle this side of Moe's pet shop." Now come on, Leo. That's not fair. The pets at Moe's pet shop aren't dumb. They're just drunk, all right? And by the way, Leo, the 4 turtles couldn't take Slash when they all attacked him at once. So give Donnie a break, all right, guys? So the guys run over to the Channel 6 news building, and they're stopped by Slash's force field. They can't get in. However, it really offers no resistance to them whatsoever because they notice that it doesn't go up the whole way of the building. And then Mikey uses his grappling hook so that they can all climb inside. What was the even point of having that shield projector? Inside the building, Slash continues to wreak havoc. He starts harassing some old ladies and whatnot. And he finally tells us, the viewers, his plan. He's going to turtleize the city. There will be turtle cooking shows, turtle news shows, turtle home shopping channels, and a turtle weather channel. Slash wants to be Turtle Supreme. Really? That's your whole plan? You want to be Turtle Supreme and just have a bunch of stupid turtle shows? The guys reach Slash pretty quickly, but they can't do much to stop him. He blasts at them with his triple barrel blaster, and I really like how it splits up like that. I think that's really cool. I kind of wish that NECA would have made a variation of that original toy they made, where the barrels were angled outwards like this. Does he hit the turtles? No. He actually hits some studio lights, and they fall down and crush the guys. That's all he likes to do, is crush and throw and crush. As Slash moves in for the kill, Raph asks, what we're all thinking. How'd you get so smart? And finally, we all get an answer. Now, this story sort of cancels out the end of the last episode, where Slash's scowl was teleported to Dimension X, and it flew off into Dimension X space to explore strange new worlds, and he had his binky by his side to keep him happy. Here, it sounds as though he just continued to fly through our dimension space, and he also seems a little angry at the turtles. He says, which was your doing, by the way, when he's talking about them, about him hurtling through space. Either that, or I just don't understand Dimension X in our dimension's space. Is Dimension X just far, very far away in our galaxy somewhere, or is it on a completely different plane of existence? Mikey also says that he remembers all of this from episode 74. And according to Wikipedia, just to be a technical little bastard, that was episode 80. All right. Back to Slash's story. Slash crashed on an alien world that was inhabited by hyper-intelligent beings. These creatures took pity on Slash's low IQ, so they increased his intelligence beyond the wildest dreams of mere mortals. After that, he returned to Earth so he could become the #1 Supreme Turtle. See, he didn't get much smarter at all. I mean, come on. Like, Slash, if you would have stayed on that planet, you could have been the #1 turtle, because you would have been the only turtle on that planet. He says that now that he's returned to Earth, he wants to turn everybody into a turtle, but in my opinion, Slash to me would return to Earth and then like destroy everything. You know, like he would get rid of everybody and topple over every building so that way he can replace them with giant palm trees and become the only person on the Earth. You know, because people seem to irritate him. Like in the last episode, he was really bothered by everybody tricking him. I don't know. I just picture him causing destruction on a massive scale, even though he is super smart. I just kind of feel like his violent tendencies would cross over. And you may be wondering, how's he going to turn everybody into turtles anyway? Well, he says he's going to do it with the help of his Animalizer Ray. And Mikey kind of acts like, Animalizer Ray? Nothing like that exists. But doesn't he remember Baxter Stockman's Mutazoo ray gun? Like, obviously, the turtles live in a world where people have prioritized creating mutagen devices and mutagen oozes. During the middle of the Slash and Turtles standoff, Burn and Vernon butt in. So, Slash uses his Animalizer Ray to turn them into turtles. The first in many. Slash's figures must be off because when he was dreaming of a turtle planet, you know, just a few seconds ago, all of the turtles were humanoid. You know, they weren't just little turtles. Seeing an open window for attack, the guys try to get Slash, but he hops on a board and it causes them to fly through the air. You know, it's like something you would see in like a Looney Tunes cartoon. I guess, you know what? Fine. It's something you would see in a Ninja Turtle cartoon. Before the guys can get in another attack, Slash pulls out his freeze ray and he freezes the guys in their tracks. I've always been a big fan of snow and ice stuff, so I really like this very cool looking Slash freeze ray. I like how it's got 2 barrels and there's like that support leg or whatever that sits on his body. And one of the coolest things of all, and I guess all of the weapons that Slash has, I love that like he pushes a button on top of it and it like folds on itself and he could fit it right in his backpack. You know, I think that backpack was a really cool design choice for Slash in this episode, just because it's neat how he pulls out whatever device he needs. Surprisingly, they didn't make like a toy with that in the past, but I guess it's finally come to fruition with these brand new Slash toys. It's like the writers were thinking, someday they're going to make a toy of this, and these suckers are going to buy it. After putting the guys on ice, Slash grabs Burn and Vernon, throws them in a fruit box, and heads to the roof. Up on the roof, Slash finds the ultra heterodyne, how do you pronounce that? I can't remember, antenna. The final piece he needs for his trans-frequency flux oscillator. Now, New York will be under his control. He goes to work making the modifications to the antenna, and while he does that, Burn and Vernon try to escape. Now, this actually leads to a very funny scene. You know, I like this. I don't know why. It's just funny to watch these two very deformed and ugly-looking turtles fall down this huge set of steps. I think what makes it even funnier is when Burn pushes Vernon down the steps first, because Vernon is too scared to go down them. Down and down they go. You know, I kind of wish that they would have went all the way down to the bottom of the building, you know? Did you ever see the Looney Tunes episode or short, Porky Pig's Feet, where Daffy sends the Broken Arms hotel manager down the steps? He pulls the rug out from underneath him, and he just keeps on going all the way down. I laugh every time I watch that. It's one of the best Looney Tunes shorts of all time. Frank Tashlin was a genius. Meanwhile, April finds the guys chilling out in the studio, so she gets her hairdryer to thaw them out. I hope this thing is like the industrial strength hairdryer, because otherwise a normal hairdryer would take days to get them out of that block of ice. Whatever kind of hairdryer it is, it doesn't matter, because really in their world, I would say it takes April maybe like a half hour
to thaw them out, not much at all. This is actually a pretty good moment for April, and the first step in paying the turtles back for all the times they saved her. She's just got to save them 999 more times. As soon as the guys are all warmed up, they're ready to fight Slash. But where is he? Luckily, Burn and Vernon show up just in time to tell them that Slash is up on the roof.
Donnie deducts that Slash is going to use the station's antenna to amplify his animalizer ray. Finally, Don's brains have paid off. The turtles head up to the roof, but it's too late. Slash is able to blast himself and the antenna over to the top of the Trumpet Tower apartment building, the tallest structure in the city. Up here, it'll be easier for him to turn everybody into turtles, So 3 of the guys go after Slash, while Donnie goes to the lair to get something. I love how when they show up on the top of the building, they just sort of jump over the railing. Like, this is the tallest structure in the city. They didn't have the van with the launcher. No, they didn't have the turtle blimp. Did they climb the side of the building? Shouldn't they be out of breath? Shouldn't it have taken them quite a while to get up there? To protect himself, Slash sends Robot Wars robots after them. And they rough the turtles up. I mean, one blocks Raph's size, and then it starts chasing them. It's a pretty embarrassing moment for the Ninja Turtles. But before the turtles are horribly hurt, Don shows up. And this is how you know he's the smart turtle, because he either took the stairs, or better yet, he took an elevator to get up there. Not to mention, he brought his automatic pizza slicer to dismantle the antenna. And even better for the guys, destroy the weaker robots. The pizza slicer breaks in the process, but finally, Don turns his failure into a victory. Just like Splinter said he would. And what of Slash? Well, Donnie finally outsmarts him. He tells Slash that, he's dumb because he could have used the animalizer ray on them to turn them into humans. Donnie says if Slash turned the turtles into humans, he would be the only turtle in town. I mean, but that's not even what his plan is. He wants to, turn everybody into turtles. But Slash loves the idea, so he goes to shoot Donatello, and then Donatello throws Burn and Vernon in the air, and they get shot with the ray and turned back into humans. Next, Donatello knocks the animalizer out of Slash's hand, which causes it to break on the ground, and then Leo cuts the Channel 6 news antenna into pieces, which I gotta say is fantastic because it's nice to see him actually use the swords for something, In a fit of rage, Slash pushes the other 3 turtles off the roof, and he falls with them. Here, Mikey is able to use his grappling hook successfully, and it saves both him, Leonardo, and Raph, but Slash falls to the street. The impact of hitting the street reverts Slash back to his moronic form, although I'd say this is, an even dumber form than what he was in his first appearance. He may even have a severe learning disability now. Because
he even goes, "Duh, tell me again about the turtles, George." After that, they don't show it, but they say that they're going to put him back on his spaceship and I guess irresponsibly send him back into space. I mean, he's probably got brain damage and a concussion. Somebody should be keeping an eye on him. Plus, he's not as smart as he used to be. He probably can't control the ship anymore.
What they honestly should have done, I think, is earlier they made it a point for Vernon to talk about the new turtle habitat at the zoo. I think the episode should have ended with a much simpler Slash, a less violent Slash, living in the turtle habitat with the unmutated turtles as Turtle Supreme, He could have been their giant turtle god, and there could have been a giant palm tree to keep him happy. Despite my criticisms, I do enjoy this episode. I think it's a good one. I do probably like his personality more, I don't know, in the first one because he's crazier and, aggressive. Here he's just sort of like your stereotypical smart villain, and we have a lot of those in Ninja Turtles already. Although I will say, I really like all of the weaponry they gave him in this one. Everything he's got is cool. I love all the different guns and rays. I I love how all the weapons collapse into his backpack. I think that's a really cool feature. And obviously they were thinking about toys in the future with that. Next, Slash makes his final appearance in the Season 7 episode, Night of the Rogues. In this episode, there's no explanation as to how Shredder found him or what happened between the last episode and this one. I've talked about this episode many times before, so I'm only going to focus on the key Slash moments and give you a gist of the episode, not go into full-on detail again. Basically, the Shredder got tired of Bebop and Rocksteady's crap, so he locked them in a Technodrome closet and put together a team of villains to beat the Turtles once and for all. He does say that he got some of these villains from Dimension X, but as I said, nothing about where Slash came from.
I like this room right here where Krang discusses his plan for this week's episode. Basically, Krang wants to dig up a crashed spaceship that was owned by Captain Logos. Captain Logos was a space pirate, and he had a bunch of treasure on his ship when it crash landed on Earth. So at first, Krang had to figure out where it was located. Turns out it's located in the sewers, and now he wants to dig it up with the foot soldiers. Shredder wants to use some of the money to pay the rogues for their help. If I were Krang, I'd dig up that treasure and I'd kill Shredder and I'd kill all the rogues. Pay nobody nothing. And if the rogues succeeded in fighting the Turtles, there'd be no one left to stop you. With April's help, the guys are able to figure out that Krang wants to get something in the sewers, and that's where they head. And that's where they encounter Shredder's rogues.
His rogues consist of the Rat King, Leatherhead, Tempestra, Scumbug, don't forget him, Anthrax, Chrome Dome, and of course, Slash. During the first battle, Slash picks up Donatello. Man, he really hates Donatello specifically, and he tosses him away like he's a used napkin. And basically, that's it for the first battle with Slash. It's kind of disappointing. And he doesn't even speak. At the end of this battle, the Turtles escape, so the Rogues decide to split up and tear up the city in hopes of pulling the Turtles out of hiding. Slash and the Rat King head to a local pizza shop. Here, Slash talks, finally, and in my opinion, I don't know, it's not the Slash you want. Pat Fraley basically had 3 different voices for Slash. He had the angry, aggressive one in the first episode, the super intelligent snot in the second episode, which kind of reminds me of Pat Fraley as Sir Guy Standforth in the DuckTales episode Lost Crown of Genghis Khan. And then he has this other one where he's just kind of stupid. He sounds kind of like a drunken Pete Puma. Slash and the Rat King cause a disturbance at Ye Old Pizza, the first restaurant ever built in the city. And yeah, at about 11 o'clock at night in New York City, Ye Old Pizza is being declared a historic landmark. Okay, it's over 400 years old, so Slash and the Rat King scare the people away, and Slash suggests that they steal it. My gosh, I have a hard... Slash is a tricky word for me to say, apparently. So Rat King has his rats eat through the building's foundation, and Slash lifts it into the air with his super strength. Mikey gets there just in time to say, "Put that down!" Which, of course, Slash does, right on top of Michelangelo. Again, Slash resorting to burying his enemies. Mikey is able to climb out of the debris, but Slash and Rat King capture him. Throughout the next couple of scenes, the other rogues capture the other turtles, and then the rogues leave all the turtles in a giant robot statue on top of a bug zapper pest control building, along with a disintegrator. During this scene, Slash says nothing, does nothing. Later on, the villains walk in a group down the street, very inconspicuously, and they all talk about what they're going to do with their money.
Basically, they're just bickering over who will rule the world. The rats, the bugs. But unfortunately, Slash again says nothing.
Eventually, the turtles are saved by April, Irma, Splinter, Zack, the 5th turtle, and Casey Jones. And all of the heroes go to confront the Shredder and Krang. At this point, the villains have finally dug up the legendary treasure of the Dread Space Pirate logos. But unfortunately for the rogues, they won't receive their payment, because the turtles take the disintegrator that was meant to disintegrate them, and they throw it right into Captain Logos' ship. And all that treasure, it's gone now. Kablooey. It is no more. The treasure has ceased to be. The rogues blame Shredder and Krang for this, and they chase after them with various weapons. The one that Slash is holding here kind of looks like a rough version of Scumbug's exterminating gun. But really, there's nothing exciting going on with Slash here. Once Shredder and Krang are saved by Bebop and Rocksteady, the rogues decide that it's not worth the effort to fight the turtles because they're not getting paid. I mean, they could still destroy them if they wanted to with their powers combined. You know, they could still do it, but they run off like a bunch of wimps. I mean, if the turtles were gone, they could rob whatever they wanted. They could still come out on top with loads of cash. And once again, you know, Slash said nothing throughout this end scene. Overall, I think Slash was very underused in this episode, even though I like this one. You know, they just really didn't use Slash at all, other than lifting up ye old pizza. I would have preferred the somewhat smarter Slash from the first episode, you know. Obviously, he's not a genius, but he's not as dumb, I think, as they portray him here. But at the end of these 3 episodes, I would have to say that I recommend all 3 of them, but the season 4 first appearance of Slash is definitely the top episode with him. If you haven't seen any of these episodes, you should check that one out. And that's it. Now, there's not really much else for me to say, so I'm just going to say I hope you enjoyed this review. It took me a while to get it going. I had some, I don't know, I just kept on having all these hiccups. Even in the past week, I said this thing was going to be out last Saturday, and just things kept on popping up, and I had to postpone it until almost 9 days later. So sorry about that, everybody. So thanks for watching. Let me know what you think, and have a good one.